Hello, welcome to the weekly movie minute. Today, we're going to talk about Oddity. Oddity is the new low-budget horror flick produced by Shudder and distributed by IFC, helmed by Irishman Damien McCarthy, who wrote and directed the film. Oddity is a second full feature film, and boy, is it a good one. Shudder has been making a name for itself recently with these low-budget horror flicks that receive a lot of buzz and typically rely on some type of gimmick. This trend kind of started with Skinamarink in 2022. They had some experience producing horror films, notably Rob Zombie's 31, and some various other original programs, but Skinamarink was the first to become this real buzzy, talked-about horror movie. Audiences weren't exactly sure what to make of it. It was definitely an art piece, one that was meant to polarize audiences, but I also don't think the plan was really for anyone to see it. The budget for Skinamarink is listed online at $15,000. I don't even know how you can cover the cost of equipment rentals or craft services for that amount, but it was definitely an experimental film that got in front of a lot more eyeballs than people had planned. Skinamarink, though, is a bad movie. I know critics love to praise it for the interesting use of camera angles and inventive set design, creating a space that feels much bigger than it really is, but there is no plot whatsoever in Skinamarink. House of Leaves took a small space and created a bigger one out of it too. That was a book, and there was a story there. This whole movie is literally just vibes and ambiance, and while that's fine and cool for a short flick, it wears out its welcome very quickly in a feature. Great trailer, fantastic short, terrible movie. Earlier this year, though, Shudder released another buzzy, gimmicky horror movie that was much better. The Carnes brothers' Late Night with the Devil. Late Night with the Devil uses the framing device of an old late-night talk show, with much of the film being presented as if we're watching the show. It's a lot like Ghost Watch, that 1992 BBC production that totally freaked audiences out on Halloween night. My biggest problem with Late Night was actually the moments that it took away from the gimmicky talk show presentation. There's a 10-minute or so prelude that just dumps exposition before the show within a film starts in earnest. It just feels like this lazy conceit, and the entire movie, while you're watching it, you're just thinking, well, they said this at the beginning of the movie, so when is that plot point going to show up? These exposition drops could have easily been slipped in somewhere during the talk show segments, but still, it's a fine film that's actually made better because of its gimmick. With Oddity, however, there are no gimmicks. This is more or less just a standard horror flick shot on a small budget with a limited number of actors. The best part of Oddity is how it uses these limitations to its advantage, working within the constraint, not against it. The film opens with a brief prologue of Danny, the wife of Dr. Ted Timmis. She's home alone at their giant country house, which is still in the early stages of being renovated. Dr. Ted works nights at a psychiatric hospital, while Danny stays by herself at this creepy old house. One night, a former patient of Dr. Ted's shows up at the door, telling Danny she needs to let him inside, that someone else is in the house, and if she would just let him in, he can help her out. The film never shows us exactly what happens, it just pushes us a year into the future and lets us know that Danny was killed that night, and the crazed former patient, Olin Boyle, was convicted of the crime and was later found murdered in his room in the psychiatric hospital. Oddity plays around with several horror movie tropes, but that's not a bad thing. Some flicks like Longlegs just get so caught up in trying to be different things that they end up never finding their footing in anything. Oddity seamlessly plays like a paranormal thriller, a haunted house story, a ghost story, and even a bit of an homage to Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart, all while firmly feeling like its own thing. I won't get too deep into the plot of the film because it's really easy to spoil. The film pretty much spoils its own big twist with foreshadowing, but honestly, that's forgivable in a 98-minute horror flick. There is a mystery to solve, but that's not the real reason for seeing the movie. The audience is all keenly aware of the main character's truth 20 or so minutes into the movie, but everything McCarthy is doing here is executed so perfectly that we don't care. We're here for the ride and the scares, and this film certainly delivers on the latter. I couldn't find a budget listed anywhere online, but I'm assuming from the lack of marketing and the use of only 2 real sets in the entire film that it must have been pretty minuscule. But the director uses everything in that small budget to create a tense atmosphere and well-earned jump scares. Throughout most of the movie, there is this super creepy wooden life-size man statue that's just hanging out in the frame. It's really unsettling and adds to the overall tension throughout the film. And when the inevitable does happen with the wooden man, it feels earned, not like a shoehorned in gimmick. Most of its runtime takes place in the house Danny died in, mostly in just one room of this house, with an occasional scene set in a bedroom or Dr. Ted's office, but the set itself is so haunting that it doesn't get old being there. The walls are this dark, natural stone that give off a cool feeling, even when the tones of the rest of the film are starkly dark and dreary. And that's the magic of Oddity. The film works within these limitations, the small budget, few locations, and a small number of actors. These are not concessions, these are features. There are no CGI scenes, every effect is practical. There aren't any high-budget action sequences, no chase scenes. Everything is this small, contained, terrifying story. The script was written with all of these limitations in mind, and a great film was born out of it. Oddity is a master class in low-budget cinema, especially low-budget horror, and I'm incredibly surprised at how much I enjoyed this film. I'm giving it a hard 9, and I hope everyone gets the chance to see this wonderful summer movie. Thank you so much for hanging out. Please like and subscribe if you like this movie. Really trying to get a little bit of a subscriber count over here on the YouTube. If you want, you can go check out our Medium page. It's create.context. And we will be doing a longer podcast here at the beginning of August on the Super Mario Brothers movie. Thanks again for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.